What's going on, everybody? Welcome on into the Matt Lombardo Show presented by Heavy Sports. I'm Heavy Sports Senior NFL Insider Matt Lombardo. Great to have you here. The 2022 NFL season officially in the books. Super Wildcard Weekend upcoming. The coaching carousel has already begun to spin, and I'm of the belief that we're about to see some unprecedented quarterback movement across the NFL this offseason. So much to get into. We have a big show on tap. It's on the best job openings around the league, what the heck the Chicago Bears are going to do with the number one overall pick. And of course, we'll get into all of the big storylines heading into the NFL postseason, because I think that there are some teams that could surprise, and there are a couple teams that are primed for maybe a letdown and an early exit from the NFL playoffs. So much to get into. But before we do, a little bit of housekeeping as always. If you enjoy the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you went into the Apple Podcast Store, Spotify, SoundCloud, all of your favorite podcast platforms, and subscribed. Toss us a like on YouTube if you could as well. And if you're in the Apple Podcast Store, please go ahead and leave those 5-star reviews. They really help grow the show. You can let us know what you like, what you don't like. Maybe if there's a guest you really want to hear from, leave it in the review. Just let us know who you want the next guest to be, and we will try to track them down and bring them on. And one team that I think hasn't quite done enough to survive the gauntlet of the NFL playoffs is the Dallas Cowboys. And they drew maybe the toughest draw of Super Wildcard Weekend, if you think about it, because is anyone betting against Tom Brady in the NFL playoffs? Especially when Brady's coming off a year where we've seen time and time again that he can play mediocre football, or let's be honest here, a lot worse than mediocre, for 40 minutes of a game, and then bang, come back and beat you in the fourth quarter. We saw it 5 times this year. Brady had 5 fourth quarter comebacks this season alone, including against the New Orleans Saints in primetime on Monday Night Football, and people will say the Saints didn't make the playoffs. It's a division game. It's an NFC South game that they had to win. Fourth quarter comeback, game-winning drive where he was just electric against the Carolina Panthers. That was a de facto playoff game with the division title on the line. And when you look across the league, when you look across the sport, when you look across the history of the game, nobody is more clutch than Tom Brady. But that's not the big reason why I'm bearish about Dallas and I'm worried about the Cowboys in this game. Because when you look at the other quarterback in this matchup, Dak Prescott and the Cowboys offense have regressed significantly over the second half of this season and dramatically over the last 4 or 5 weeks. You look at what's happened. Prescott has tossed at least 1 interception each of the past 7 games. Two of those have been returned for touchdowns over that span, including the interception in overtime against Jacksonville that ended the game, a game the Jaguars had no business winning. And they had a pick 6 to win the game off of Prescott. That defense, look, Micah Parsons started the year at a Defensive Player of the Year level. There were a lot of moments where you thought, wow, he really is the MVP. Parsons has kind of come back down to earth. The defense has faded. They've been less opportunistic. They haven't been able to force as many turnovers. The offense has become turnover prone. That's a really difficult combination and a really difficult proposition to overcome in the postseason, where the games are tighter, the opponents are better, and you're more evenly matched. And you look at this Cowboy team right now, it just feels like the kind of game where the dam breaks for the Cowboys at some point, that they're going to give a couple of big plays to Brady, to Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, or something's going to happen, and it's just going to go off the rails. When you look at the Cowboys, especially over the past 4 weeks, there have been real problems. Defensively, offensively, they just haven't played all that well over the final 4 weeks of the season. And over that span, they've been outscored 113 to 107. Not great. That's not the caliber of football that you want to play going into the postseason, especially when you're lined up opposite the greatest quarterback and the most clutch quarterback to ever play the game. So I don't necessarily think Tampa Bay can make a run. I think they might be one and done, but I think that one is knocking off the Cowboys. I think Brady certainly has enough left in the tank, especially late in a tight game, to beat Dallas. So I really like Tampa Bay in this game, and I think that if they win, if the Buccaneers win this game, it is going to trigger all kinds of questions in Dallas. And I know that Jerry Jones went on the radio this week and gave a proverbial vote of confidence to Mike McCarthy. I get it. I really do. But if it's 2 years in a row where you're one and done and you lose on Super Wildcard Weekend, as a 4 seed or whatever the Cowboys are going into this game, and Sean Payton's sitting out there, I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas moves on from Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones makes the big push for Sean Payton. But either way, I like Tampa Bay in this game. And another Florida team that I think is plenty capable of making a run, maybe winning more than one game, and I think certainly have to be viewed as the favorites going into their matchup this weekend, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, you look at what they've done over the final stretch of this season. You look at the job that Doug Peterson has done molding Trevor Lawrence. He's a different quarterback. This is what everybody thought the Jaguars were getting when they chose Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall. And you look at what they've done, they're capable of making a postseason run here. The rest of the league has taken notice too. If you go check out my weekly column on heavy.com, I surveyed a dozen current NFL executives, coaches, scouts, players, kind of ran the bandit here to get a feel for who the league believes is a surprise team that can ruin somebody's day, somebody that they would not want to face in the playoffs if they were coaching against them tomorrow. And they were a popular choice, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were a popular choice both among a current NFL defensive line coach and a personnel executive. And I think there's really good reason for that. They've won 5 in a row, 6 of their last 7. And over that span, the Jaguars bullied the Tennessee Titans twice. Now I get it, Ryan Tannehill got hurt, and we talked about it on the podcast. The week after Ryan Tannehill got hurt, I came on this show and said the Jaguars are the team to beat. You remember that? Well, the Jaguars went out, and the reason Tennessee is out of the postseason isn't just Tannehill getting hurt. It's Jacksonville taking care of business and beating them twice, earning their 4th AFC South crown in franchise history. And it's not just the offensive firepower around Trevor Lawrence. And Lawrence has been pretty special, right? 66% completion percentage, passed for 4,113 yards. He has 25 touchdowns. But even more importantly, one of the biggest question marks about Lawrence coming into this year was ball security. He's only thrown 8 interceptions. But that's not the biggest reason the Jaguars should scare some people. It's the defense. That Jacksonville defense has become a swarming and opportunistic bunch. You saw it Saturday night in the finale against Tennessee. That was a party in Duval because of what the defense did. Because when the offense kind of fell asleep in the second half, the defense tightened the screws. Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker, they have absolutely harassed opposing quarterbacks all year. But you look at what they've done down the stretch. Josh Allen has 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles over the last 2 weeks. Trayvon Walker, as a rookie, as the number 1 overall pick in the draft, 36 quarterback pressures this year. That's a strong rookie season. And you look at the Jaguars, man. You look at that team, they're balanced. They're playing complementary football. As an NFL executive told me, they're on a roll right now. They have momentum. They have the kind of quarterback that you'd want to build around. And in Doug Peterson, they have a championship-winning, Super Bowl pedigreed head coach with the ability to develop young quarterbacks. That's what you want. And Doug Peterson landed in the perfect situation with an elite franchise quarterback waiting in the wings, talent on both sides of the ball. They're young. He's relatable to his players. He has the ring to back it up. And I don't know that they're going to win another one this year, but I think they get some valuable postseason experience. Look, this is not a team I would want to face early. And I know Justin Herbert is going to be a challenge. It's his first NFL playoff start as well, just as it is Trevor Lawrence's. He's the best quarterback that the Jaguars have faced, Justin Herbert is, since Patrick Mahomes back in week 10. But the Jaguars have all the pieces, all the talent, the coaching, and the momentum to make a little bit of a run, or at least get through round 1. I don't know that they're going to beat Baltimore, Cincinnati, or Buffalo, or Kansas City, but I think they get by this game, and I think they put the fear of God in whoever they play in round 2. But when you look in the NFC, I think the Eagles might be in a little bit of trouble because there's a feeling inside the NFL that the 49ers are the team to beat in the NFC. And I think that's a tough one to argue right now because the Eagles and 49ers are the only 2 teams in the NFC with top 5 offenses and top 5 defenses. But the difference between San Francisco and Philadelphia right now is the 49ers are healthy and they seem to be peaking. They seem to be playing their best football at the most important time of the year. They're not going through the kind of injuries that the Eagles have had to battle through. And they finished strong. They finished in a big way on both sides of the ball down the stretch. And this time of year, the fact that the 49ers can basically go on autopilot with Brock Purdy, that's a real credit to Kyle Shanahan and that offense, that they're able to go from Trey Lance to Jimmy Garoppolo to Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick in the 2022 NFL draft. They can go down that sliding scale of quarterback play and not skip a beat. The reason they can do that is they have the league's number one rushing offense, and that makes them incredibly dangerous in the postseason. Whether it's in San Francisco, whether they have to go to Philadelphia, or they have to go somewhere where it's cold and the elements play a factor, it makes them really dangerous in the point where their defense is holding opponents to 16.3 points per game. They lead the league in rushing. And when you can do those things, when you can force offenses off the field, force 3 and outs, create turnovers, keep points off the scoreboard, and then run the ball and pound your opponent into submission, that's a really tough formula to overcome. That's a tough team to beat. You're going to keep the high-flying offenses off the field, those quick strike offenses like you have in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson, like you have in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. You're going to limit those opportunities if you can run the ball effectively and create turnovers and get off the field. And I had a current player in the NFC West tell me that he thinks after playing the Niners twice this year that they're going to the Super Bowl. This player told me that it's all about the talent on defense at all 3 levels, and that their running game is not only terrific with Christian McCaffrey, but it's versatile. You can win in multiple different ways, whether it's up the middle, RPOs, they do a little bit of everything. It's a tough team to beat. And besides, they've won 10 straight. They beat the Chargers, they beat the Dolphins, they beat the Buccaneers, and they beat the Seahawks over that span. All those teams are going to the postseason. And here's the kicker. They held those teams to 13.25 points per game. That's less than 2 touchdowns per game, less than 14 points against all those offenses, against Tua, against Tom Brady, against Geno Smith, who's been kind of operating on the fringes of the MVP conversation all year long. Make no mistake about it, the 49ers are a dangerous team, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least if we look up in February and the 49ers are the team standing on the NFC sideline at the Super Bowl in Glendale, Arizona. And in the AFC, I think there's a team that nobody is giving enough credit to. There's a quarterback who I think is consistently undervalued, both in the MVP conversations and just by the casual football public. That's Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Because for some reason, Cincinnati has flown under the radar all season. But all Burrow and the Bengals do is they keep winning games. Cincinnati's won 8 in a row, 10 of their final 11. Over that span, they beat the Titans. They beat Kansas City. Remember, Joe Burrow is the only quarterback in the league to beat Patrick Mahomes 3 straight times. They went into Tampa and beat Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, and they waxed Baltimore. They took out all of their anger, all of their frustrations on the NFL for the contingencies, the coin toss to determine home field if there was a tie, everything that went into the potential to shaft them in terms of playoff seeding. They took all of that out on the Ravens last week to win the AFC North and clinch a home field game on Wild Card Weekend. And here's what makes Cincinnati so dangerous. The Bengals are no longer just an offense where Joe Burrow drops back in the pocket and chucks the ball downfield because, hey, Jamar Chase is down there somewhere. No, what they have is they're beating teams on short and intermediate passing routes. The offensive line is playing its best football of the year. And we talked about this a few times throughout the course of the season. It took some time for Alex Kappa and Lael Collins and some of those veteran additions to gel with the rest of that line, but they've gelled. And the Bengals offensive line is playing their best football of the year. And only Tom Brady gets rid of the football quicker than Joe Burrow. That makes him really tough to beat. That makes him, and really illustrates how good he is at pre-snap reads, at dictating to defenses, and just how quickly he processes information to get rid of the football. But over that span, the Bengals defense, while the offense is starting to peak a little bit, the Bengals defense has held opponents to fewer than 17 points in 6 of their 10 games. So when you watch the Bengals, their offense is really unique because they will throw to run. And what I mean by that is they'll pass the football to stretch a defense out early. You'll see those quick strikes to T. Higgins or Jamar Chase early in games. And then they'll just pound the rock with Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. Then they'll go back over the top late because safeties have crept up towards the line of scrimmage to respect the run game. They're really multifaceted. And when I look at their philosophy, it's almost like you've merged an old school power running offense with explosive talent on the perimeter with a quarterback who's one of the more cerebral in the game right now. I've said it before, and I think I'll say it again until I'm blue in the face. Joe Burrow is the next Tom Brady. I'm convinced that that's what Joe Burrow's ceiling is. And he was right when he made the comment that the Bengals Super Bowl window is his entire career. He's only 26. They have all the weapons around him. He's in a great offensive scheme with all kinds of synergy with head coach Zach Taylor. And he's only going to get better from here, the more snaps that he has with Jamar Chase at wide receiver. And earlier this season, he went down and he beat Tom Brady. Burrow went down, and in my opinion, he took the baton from Tom Brady in that game. Burrow has 4 fourth-quarter comebacks. We mentioned Brady has 5. If Tom Brady is the greatest clutch quarterback of all time, Joe Burrow is nipping at the heels and maybe even leading as the most clutch quarterback of this generation, that next generation of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. I put Burrow at the top of that list. Now, I don't think he yet has the accomplishments of Patrick Mahomes. I don't know that he's as athletically gifted as Patrick Mahomes. He's less reckless than Mahomes is. He plays more within the confines of a system, and I think at a higher consistent level than Mahomes. I just have a feeling Burrow's going to go down as one of the best to ever play the game, and I think that they get by Baltimore pretty easily. And if I had to make a pick today on today's show, who comes out of the AFC, I really think Burrow and the Bengals get back. They're not intimidated by going to Arrowhead. They're not intimidated by Josh Allen and the Bengals. They know they can beat Baltimore. They've done that. So if I had to make my pick to represent the AFC, it's the Bengals and it's Joe Burrow. And just as we talked about some of these teams that are peaking at the right time, the Jaguars, the Bengals, even to a lesser extent, maybe Tampa Bay because of the matchup that they drew, Eagles not so much. As a team that started out like gangbusters, everything, and I mean everything for the Eagles hinges on Jalen Hurts. Hinges on Jalen Hurts' health, hinges on his effectiveness. And a few weeks back, Michael Parsons made all kinds of waves, all kinds of headlines across the country when he suggested that Jalen Hurts is a system quarterback. Well, let me tell you, if the last month has shown anything, Jalen Hurts is the Eagles system. Everything about what the Eagles do when they're successful is because Jalen Hurts is the key to the Eagles' success. Everything about Philadelphia's Super Bowl aspirations hinges on Jalen Hurts playing at a high level and being healthy. And listen, I'm in Philadelphia, so the Eagles game is on pretty much every week. So it's one of the 3 games that I have on the 3 TVs in the heavy NFL command center. So I've watched a lot of Jalen Hurts, and his ability to win pre-snap has dramatically improved this season. His ability to manipulate defenses has improved dramatically this season. He looks off safeties. He creates opportunities for his receivers downfield. And in a lot of ways, we saw just how important that is to the Eagles' offensive success because Gardner Minshew clearly wasn't able to. I think the optimism around Minshew in Philadelphia coming in for the Eagles, I think that was a little foolish. I said it at the time. I really felt it. That I think people were underestimating the drop-off from Jalen Hurts to Gardner Minshew. Just look at the disaster against the Saints. But if Jalen Hurts is healthy, the Eagles have a real chance. Because as high as I am on Joe Burrow, I think there's a real potential here that if Jalen Hurts continues to develop and ascend at this level in this system with Nick Sirianni, with all of these weapons and that offensive line, I think we're going to look up over the next several years, and we're going to say that Jalen Hurts is a more mobile Peyton Manning. He plays the game above the shoulders at a level that Peyton Manning was just an assassin at the peak of his career, and he adds the mobility. I think that Jalen Hurts makes that Eagles offense go. I really do. The bad news for the Eagles right now is they're banged up. I don't know how effective Lane Johnson is going to be if he plays. I think he's critical to their success on offense. I think getting C.J. Gardner-Johnson back at safety is huge in that secondary because there was a real drop-off in Darius Slay and James Bradbury's level of play in C.J. Gardner-Johnson's absence. So if they get healthy and they have the bye, they need the bye, they need it more than most teams would, then I think they have a real chance because if Hurts is healthy, this is one of the toughest teams to beat. His final 4 games when he was healthy, I'm not talking about the Giants game where they decided they were not going to let Jalen Hurts get hit under any circumstance. You're going to run out of bounds, you're going to slide, you're going to throw the ball away, you're not taking on any physical contact. But the final 4 games where Hurts was healthy, he passed for 1,065 yards. He had 7 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. And where it matters most for the Eagles to have Hurts playing at a high level is in the red zone. This season, he passed for 9 red zone touchdowns. He rushed for 11 more. And it's worth noting that Hurts is 14-1 as a starter this year against the NFL's toughest strength of schedule. So these weren't cupcakes. This wasn't a last place schedule where you're playing the AFC South and the last place in every division. That was a really difficult schedule the Eagles mowed through, and they blew teams out almost every week. So while I'm worried about Jalen Hurts from a Philadelphia perspective, if Jalen Hurts is healthy, then I think the Eagles have a real shot to make a real run, whether it's to the championship game or getting by San Francisco and going to the Super Bowl or more than that. Because he's been one of the best quarterbacks this year. He's been an MVP caliber quarterback, maybe, second or third with Mahomes and Burrow. He's right in that mix. Had he stayed healthy, he's probably running away with the award. Let's be real about this. But if the Eagles are going to make a Super Bowl, it all comes down to Jalen Hurts. That's just the reality for Philadelphia. And speaking of trophies, we might not have the Lombardi trophy, but we certainly have the Lombardo trophy to give out once again this week, as we do every week. And I want to go a little bit in a different direction for this week and award this week's Lombardo trophy to Damar Hamlin's medical team. Because obviously what we all witnessed was a very near tragedy on the field in Cincinnati. And I think it brought the NFL world to its knees when Damar Hamlin suffered cardiac arrest on the field. And credit to Sean McDermott and Zach Taylor getting their team off the field, prioritizing the mental health of their players, prioritizing the need to think about and consider and care for Damar Hamlin. But did anyone think that on Monday, 1 week after we all watched in horror as Hamlin suffered cardiac arrest on the field, that he'd be discharged from the University of Cincinnati Medical Center 1 week later on Monday? And then discharged from Buffalo General Medical Center on Wednesday afternoon? It was certainly miraculous, but all of the credit in the world for Hamlin surviving and now having the chance at a complete recovery has to go to his medical team. It has to go to Denny Kellington, the assistant athletic trainer for the Buffalo Bills, who administered CPR right there on the field. I can't even imagine what must have been going through Kellington's head, giving CPR in that moment. And thank God that he was there. And thank God that the training staffs for the Bills and the Bengals were clear-minded, aggressive, quick, and did what they had to do because they gave Damar Hamlin the best chance to survive, and they resuscitated him. They brought him back to life on the field. And beyond that, to all the doctors at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, who, by the way, I love the fact that when Damar Hamlin woke up, he asked who won that game, the Bills or the Bengals, when he regained consciousness. And his team said that he won, that Damar Hamlin won the game of life. He certainly did. And the winners of this week's Lombardo Trophy are Damar Hamlin's entire medical team, who reminded us all what true heroes look like, who the true heroes are, because they saved his life and they gave him the chance at a full life after this tragic incident. All right, let's make the pick of the week. We do it each and every week. Going into Wild Card Weekend, this is no different. And keep in mind, we don't look for outright winners. We look for covers. That's what we go for. And there's a line that is just screaming going into this weekend. That's the Giants +3 as 3-point underdogs on the road in Minnesota. Listen, they took the Vikings to the brink on Christmas Eve. They fell 27-24 when Greg Joseph split the uprights from 61 yards out as time expired, avoiding overtime. That win by the Vikings was their 11th one-score victory in a season that saw the Vikings walk the high wire every single week. But I look at the Giants, and I look at the way they finished. I look at what they did a couple weeks ago with everything on the line against the Colts. And I know Indianapolis was kind of playing out the string. I get it. But the way they won, running the football, Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones protecting the football. Landon Collins' pick six, which felt really poetic, that Landon Collins would intercept the ball, return it for a touchdown in a game the Giants had to have to make the postseason after his first Giants tenure ended. They're playing with a lot of swagger. They're playing with house money. And they're playing with a belief that every time they walk on the football field, they can and will win that game. And in a lot of ways, that's been instilled by Brian Daboll since day one, not only by preaching a certain culture, but by aggressively going for it throughout the year in big spots. We mentioned Daniel Jones protecting the ball, but Saquon Barkley rushed for a career-high 1,312 yards. If the Giants can limit turnovers, establish the run early on, play a ball control offense, keep Kirk Cousins on the sideline, keep Justin Jefferson off the field, limit the Vikings' opportunities, especially from a big play perspective, then Daboll's Cinderella campaign is going to continue. And they're going to go to San Francisco or Philadelphia or wherever in round two. And we'll see if this blue-collar workman-like thing can continue. But I like the Giants. I like them winning outright this weekend. Outright. 27-3 as 3-point underdogs. Now, if you agree, if you're riding with me, then go ahead and make your bet at FanDuel. Bet on the Giants. Put your betting slip on Twitter, and next week I'll shout you out as riding with Lombardo with the pick of the week, the Giants +3 on Wildcard Weekend. This has been a great show. Really enjoyed it. Really had a great time in the conversation with Randy Mueller. Thanks to Randy. You can check him out on Twitter at @RandyMueller_. You can follow his work not only at Heavy, where he's a heavy contributor at heavy.com, but also MuellerFootball.com. Thanks to Thomas Darrow, does a tremendous job behind the glass each and every week. Instrumental in getting this show up and running every week. If you enjoy the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe to the Matt Lombardo Show in the Apple Podcast Store, Spotify, SoundCloud. Throw us a like on YouTube. Leave those 5-star reviews in the Apple Podcast Store. And you can follow me on Twitter at Matt Lombardo NFL. It's going to be a great weekend. Super Wild Card Weekend. Games on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Hope you enjoy them. I'm Matt Lombardo. I'll talk to you next week right here on the Matt Lombardo Show presented by Heavy.